we go. Unfreaking believable. Unbelievable. I gotta be honest with you. That game drove me nuts. I cannot believe the Buccaneers lost that game. Wow. I don't even know what to say. Tough one. Man, that was an absolute blazer from Cooch, wasn't it? What a crazy game. The Bulls are bowl-bound for the third season in a row. An incredible performance. And listen, we know the competition. They did what they had to do. No more silver linings. No more moral victories. It was put up or shut up time. And boy, did they rise to the occasion. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Recher podcast. Here back in the home studio today after being live at the arena yesterday at Benchmark International Arena. What a game last night between the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Utah Mammoth. I hope everybody enjoyed that one. It was a lot of fun. And this is the reason why you want to follow me on all social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram. Like and subscribe on YouTube as well, because some of the videos last night, hilarious stuff from John Cooper's press conference last night, where he thought there was a security breach. There was like a producer guy that came in, a police officer that had his radio on. Just, it's never a dull moment during these press conferences for the Tampa Bay Lightning and John Cooper. He's just such a trip. Yeah, back in action Thursday night. I'll be at the arena. I won't be at the game Thursday because I got baseball Thursday night, but I will be doing my podcast from the arena on Thursday. So we'll have some stuff from Morning Skate, plenty to get into. We're going to talk to the legend. Dave Mishkin joins us at 12:15. I actually pre-recorded the interview because he's live right now doing his stuff with Greg Linnelli. We're live at the same time. So in order for him to be able to be on, we have to pre-record. So that's what we did earlier today. A nice 30-minute chat with Dave Mishkin about his career working with Phil Esposito and his thoughts on the team, who came away with a big 2-0 victory last night against Utah. After that loss against the Columbus Blue Jackets, you needed to see, all right, let's get back to the basics. Let's see the fundamentals. I told you guys over these next 5 games, I want to see at least 7 points. That's 2 in the bag after last night. So it was really, really good stuff. So Mish joins us at 12:15 today. A great chat there. 2,000 games with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Incredible. The voice of our Tampa Bay Lightning. There is nobody like Dave Mishkin, and there's no relationship like the one that he has with our good pal Phil Esposito. So you're not going to want to miss this chat. Phenomenal. Also, we're going to start the show today talking about what's going on in the NFL with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers losing one of their coaches and if it's a big deal. We just saw some breaking news that Joe Brady is going to get promoted from the offensive coordinator to the head coach there in Buffalo. And if you remember, I said this weeks ago, you're talking, well, after the McDermott thing, I thought this makes I think this makes the most sense, because when you look at what they're doing and how they're going about their business, they're including Josh Allen in this decision. So if you're including one of your players, which I don't necessarily agree with, because what if he falls off a cliff? What if he gets injured? And now you're talking about a guy that has more power than the rest of the players on his team. Like, I think it's a very slippery slope. I really do. And we've had that discussion with our pal Ian Beckles before. You don't want to be known as like a company guy when you're in an NFL locker room. So Josh Allen, that relationship with him and his teammates needs to be above reproach, and it needs to be in a position where they're not looking at him side-eyed, because he gets an extra responsibility as, you know, somebody above the rest of the guys on the roster. So he gets what he wants. Yes, Steve Garner here. Joe Brady, how did Josh Allen get his? Yeah, I mean, if you're going to include him in these conversations and these discussions with who's going to be the next head coach, then it's going to be Joe Brady. I said this right after, you know, the loss a couple weeks ago, or last week, whatever, a couple weeks ago. Yeah, losing my mind here. And the reason why, my guy Dan Geary, the head security guard for Benchmark International Arena, before we go into the Lightning locker room, Dan is a big Bills fan. And I said to Dan, what about Joe Brady? He goes, no, they need to go in another. direction. And I texted Dan. He is not thrilled. He thinks they'll go 8-9 next year. And Dan said that if the Lightning, he said if the Bills win a Super Bowl before the Lightning win a Stanley Cup, he will wear a pair of my shoes. So Dan, I'm holding you to that, buddy. And we will talk about that on Thursday as well. So that's a huge thing. That's a huge domino falling there in the National Football League when it comes to who's going to be the next head coach for some of these openings out there. We saw Mike McDaniel, and they released the video out there with LA, with the Chargers. He's going to be their offensive coordinator. So he's not going to Buffalo. He's not going to Vegas. And we're still waiting to see who's going to take that Raiders gig, who's going to take that Cleveland Browns job. As John Harbaugh starts filling out his staff, same thing with Todd Bowles, same thing with Kevin Stefanski. So as soon as we hear more about those openings in the National Football League, we'll definitely pass that information on to you. At 12:45, after the chat with Dave Mishkin, this Darren Raddysh saga has really taken a turn for the even more of the unknown. Watching this guy and how well that he's been playing for the Tampa Bay Lightning, I find it so hard to believe that the Lightning are going to go into the 26-27 season and not have him be a part of what they're doing on the blue line. He's playing at such a high level. I know it is tough for Julien Brisebois to kind of gauge what type of player he is because, again, he was a healthy scratch in the beginning of the season. But, man, I mean, he was a huge part of why they won that game last night. We'll get into that at 12:45. At 1 o'clock, our guy Rob Maaddi is going to join us. AP, senior NFL writer. We will discuss with him all the things going on in the NFL, including previewing the Super Bowl. What does he think about the Patriots versus the Seahawks? And Rob was actually, I don't know if you guys have seen this. I've retweeted a bunch of them. Rob was the guy that informed a lot of the players in the NFL that they were AP first team and second team all pros. And those videos are incredible. Go check them out at Rob Maaddi. Those are just a look on these guys' faces. It's such a career achievement for them. I thought it was just so well done. And I'm glad that Rob got an opportunity to do that. So we'll chat with Rob. We'll also discuss this whole Shedeur Sanders being named a Pro Bowler thing. And if meaning, what does it mean now being a Pro Bowler? Does it mean anything? And if it doesn't mean anything, then what does that have anything to do with our guy Lavonte David? I'm going to put those two together. We'll do that at about 1:25 today. And then at 1:35, Zac Robinson is going to speak today for the first time as a member of the Buccaneers organization. The new Bucs OC speaks at 1 o'clock. So any of the big tidbits that we can get from that interview at 1, we will pass them on to you here on the program. A big shout out to our guy Chan. $10 super chat. Again, that's the only way we're going to be able to keep this show on the, rolling is the super chats. And our partners, of course, Honest Hammer and EverHealth. The hockey guy says the Lightning are number 1 for 2 weeks now. Obviously, the Stanley Cup will be back in the Bay based on that alone. We'll take it, buddy. That will be fantastic. We'd love to have another boat parade here in the Bay. Again, a big shout out to Honest Hammer Custom Builders, LLC, and EverHealth, our partners here on the program. The EverHealth Injury Report with Dr. Rodriguez, Thursday at 12:30. Tomorrow, the show is going to be from 11 to 12. So a special time tomorrow, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m., a little bit of an early show. I've got media day tomorrow over at USF with baseball and softball that I have to be there. Eric Erlinson, he may join us tomorrow. He may join us on Friday. So just a power hour brunch tomorrow from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. So it'll be a lot of fun. We'll touch on a little bit of everything. Okay, I mentioned the whole Joe Brady thing, and I wanted to get into this because I've seen some people discuss this on social media in the last 48 hours or so. And it's the news that Liam Cohen has brought Brian Picucci over from the Buccaneers to the Jaguars. Now, he tried to get Kevin Carberry last year. And now, obviously that wasn't happening because he was the offensive line coach, and then he got promoted to the run game coordinator, and Picucci was the offensive line coach for 2025. And now I see people out there worried about this. They're concerned that Liam Cohen poached Brian Picucci to become the offensive line coach for the run game coordinator for the Jaguars. Are we really concerned about this? Is this really an issue? Because there's no way No freaking way that I am losing any sleep over Brian Pacucci going from the Buccaneers to the Jaguars. Not one wink, not 1 ounce of sleep am I worried about this shit at all. I'm not. If you told me that you were going to take one position coach off this team and it was the offensive line coach after what we just watched in the 2025 season, you could have him. Enjoy. I'm sorry. And you're going to tell me what he did with Ben Chukwuma or what he did early in the season with Graham Barton. Like, all right, can you honestly tell me that you're impressed with what the job of the offensive line coach, you're impressed with his job this year? I'm like mumble mouth today. Can't even speak. I do this for a living, I swear. Can you honestly tell me you're impressed with what Coach Pacucci did this year with the Buccaneers? If I would have told you before the season you were going to lose 2/5 of your offensive line, but for the most part, 3/5 of them were going to be healthy, you would say, as long as we have Tristan Wirfs, as long as we have Graham Barton, and as long as we have Luke Gedeke, things will be fine, right? And you did. And then you look at the offensive line play. Was it really that good? I mean, look back at the game against the New Orleans Saints in New Orleans. Look at how bad the offensive line play was there. The backups that they had at the guard spots and how poorly that they performed this year. Go look at the PFF grades. Every single week, those guys were at the bottom. You're not expecting those guys to be Pro Bowlers, but my goodness, they have to be a little bit better than what you saw there. And even if they're not, okay, fine. You can put that on the players. You can put that on Jason Light for not fortifying that position. That's all well and good. But not one person, not one that covers this team, not one person that's a fan of this team, ever said at any point this year, wow, look at the offensive line. They've really been coached up well. Not one person. So now we're supposed to be worried that a guy that I don't think did the greatest job in the world is going to Jacksonville to be their run game coordinator. I salute you, buddy. Good luck with Liam Cohen. The Buccaneers are not missing anything losing Brian Pacucci. I'm telling you this right now. Plus, you got Zac Robinson here. He's got his own thing here. He's going to keep Kevin Carberry. They've worked together before in the past. He's going to put his own spin on this. Again, if you're worried about Brian Pacucci leaving, like that's this big loss, like this is a key loss for the Buccaneers, I could not disagree with you more. Could not disagree with you more. If I would have told you that the Buccaneers lost their offensive line coach, the majority of the Buccaneer fans would say what? Who? Can you honestly tell me that of all the position groups in 2025 that the offensive line was a strength? No freaking way. I give him, I wish him the best of luck there with Liam Cohen in Jacksonville, but this is this is water off a duck's back for me. This offense is going to be predicated on what Zac Robinson is going to do, and he's going to put his players in a position to succeed. I look at, again, somebody was asking me about this yesterday. The discussion that we had with Josh Capo last week was really, fantastic, with the talk about what Zac Robinson was going to do with this Buccaneers offense. There's fans out there, they're worried. All right, well, they run the pistol a lot. We don't really want to see the pistol with Bucky Irving and Baker Mayfield. Well, what Josh said was that he had to adjust his offensive game plan to the pieces that he had. When you have Kirk Cousins that really has trouble getting under center, going able to drop back and play action, like he couldn't do that because of the injury to the Achilles. Michael Penix Jr., the majority of the time in college, was a guy that was operating out of the shotgun. So the pistol made more sense. For Baker Mayfield, who's now been in the league for as long as he's been in, operating under center, working the play action, to his ability and those rollouts that make him successful, getting him outside the pocket where he can either keep his eyes downfield to make a throw or use his legs to get a first down. Yeah, I'm not worried about Zac Robinson. I think he's going to put these guys in a position to succeed, and I'm excited to see what the Buccaneers offense is going to look like this year with him calling the shots. But again, if you think that Brian Pacucci is some big loss for the Buccaneers offense, again, I could not disagree with you more. They will be fine. They will be fine. All right. Last night, a very special moment at Benchmark International Arena as the great Dave Mishkin called his 2,000th game. Can you believe that? 2,000 games. What was that like for Mish? What is it like working for a guy like Phil Esposito? And what's his thoughts on this team this year as they really are playing their butts off? And I love that they were able to kind of dig deep and get back to their foundation and get back to the fundamentals last night in that 2-0 win against the Utah Mammoth last night. So, time of the press conference, 1 p.m. today. But right now, we are going to chat with, again, we recorded this before the show, our good pal Dave Mishkin, the voice of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Everybody, enjoy. All right, here he is, the voice of the Tampa Bay Lightning, our good friend Dave Mishkin. Dave, thanks so much for joining us. I know it was a crazy night last night. Happy Tuesday, buddy. How are you?
I'm great. Glad to be with you today, Jay. Glad to be talking about a Lightning win against a really good team last night. I was very impressed with Utah.
Yeah.
If they play like that down the stretch and they have a favorable schedule down the stretch in their home road breakdown, I mean, Phil and I both agree. They look like they could be a playoff team and they would be a wild card team, and they might give who they get in the first round a heck of a series.
Yeah,
but they're going to have to keep playing the way that they've been playing, in 2026.
No doubt about it. I mean, going into that game last night, oh man, the Lightning are 8-1-1 in their last 10. You look at Utah, like, well, they're 8-1-1 in their last 10 too. Yeah. So you're right. I mean, just watching them get up and down the ice, and how about Dylan Guenther? I mean, that kid's release is unbelievable, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think he finished with 4 shots, but he might have had like 9 attempts. 4 missed the net, and maybe his 2 best chances missed the net. He hit the post late in the first period off the rush with only about 15 or 20 seconds left. And then Utah had a chance to grab the lead. They had back-to-back power plays in the first half of the second period. And on one of those, they had Vasilevsky scrambling a little bit because they were moving the puck around. It looked like Guenther had an open net, a little bit of a tough angle. But he's a righty shot on the left side of the ice, and he missed. So those were probably his 2 best chances. But, yeah, he can zing it. He's got 24 goals for a reason this year.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fun team to watch, and it's tough to watch as much Utah, obviously being on the East Coast. But obviously the big story last night, for a lot of us in the press box, and it was really cool. And I know, you're obviously in the booth there with Phil, but everybody giving you a really nice ovation on our side of the press box. 2,000 games, Mish. I mean, the video package was awesome, narrated by our good pal Phil Esposito. I mean, can you put into words what a night like last night meant to you? Obviously, I know you through and through Lightning guy. You're glad that the team won, but I mean, to get some recognition, 2,000 games is no small feat, my friend.
Well, thank you, Jay, and I'm very appreciative. I really am. I don't really crave like the attention. I would have been fine if they had nothing. I mean, I didn't have anything for 1,000 games. I didn't even know when that was. In fact, I wouldn't have even known it was 2,000 games. But Steve Versnick, our producer on Lightning Radio, I mean, it's not hard. You can count up the games. He counted playoff games as well as regular season games, and I've missed 3 when my first was born around that time in 2006. So, he just counted the games and subtracted 3, and he said, yeah, this game in late January is your 2,000th game. He kind of told me this a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't really know until recently the Lightning had, all this other stuff planned. But I'm very appreciative, yes, and it was a very nice gesture. You asked about, like, what does it mean to do 2,000 games? I mean, look, I was lucky to get 1 game, honestly. I mean, if you can find something that you love to do and then find someone to pay you to do that thing, like, that is it's way more than half the battle, right? And I mean, even before I got to the NHL, I spent 11 years in the minors doing what I love to do. So I consider myself fortunate and I've gotten way more than I've given. That's kind of how I look at it. So it's a hard question for me to answer. Like, what does it mean to me? I mean, they all mean a lot. Like, I get to kind of, live a dream life in a way, to do something I love to do, and it's not really work, right? So the milestones are great. Seeing those highlights reminds me that, like as a broadcaster, you get a ticket to the train, but you have no control over where the train is going. Like sometimes the train goes all the way to the end of the station. Sometimes the train doesn't even leave the station. And I've been lucky to be with this one franchise that has had, not every year, but, several years, deep playoff runs with these kind of iconic, memorable moments that are laid out for me to relate to the fans. And so, a lot of my colleagues haven't called one Stanley Cup final. I've called what, 5?
Yeah.
So three winning championship seasons as well. So all of that is just like I have no control over that, but I've been fortunate to be in clearly the right place at the right time.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. And that's something that I learned from my mom and dad growing up, and my dad working 3 jobs to keep a roof over our heads, 4 kids, and him being a custodian in our high school, my mom being a lunch lady. And I always said to myself, like, if I'm going to do anything for a profession, it's going to be something that I love. And, you're going to spend the majority of your time doing it. You're going to spend time away from your family doing it. You might as well enjoy it. You don't want to dread going to work. And I'm eternally grateful for the impact that you've had on my career. I remember right before I ever got into doing my play-by-play stuff a lot with USF, you were the first person that I reached out to, and you said pronunciation, and punctuation. Oh no, preparedness and pronunciation. Get people's names right. You never know who's Ann is watching from some other. And I remember after my first broadcast with the great Jim Lauk, he goes, "Man, you were very prepared." And I was like, "That's to Dave Mishkin." So you gave me some great advice there, my friend. And obviously, you're part of a duo that is going to go down, in history here in the Tampa Bay area. I mean, I get a chance to hang out with him before games and during intermissions, and it's never a dull moment hanging out with Phil Esposito. But what has it been like, man, being able to call games, because he is so unique, right? He's got such an incredible perspective, but even like his grumbling and even like some of these little things that he says, like a lot of people wonder, like, what is it like to be able to call that many games with a true icon in the game?
So this is not like the first year that I'm calling games with Phil. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, it's obvious,
Right.
the video last night shows us both looking a lot younger. But I mean, in some ways, I've been married to Phil longer than I've been married to my wife, which, she was with me when we came from Pennsylvania to Florida, but we got married 1 year into my Lightning career. And I had been with Phil broadcasting games. I'm kidding, of course, but we joke about it.
Right.
Like, I mean, we know each other so well on the air. Yeah, he's unconventional in terms of like, what does that mean for me, working with somebody who's unconventional? But to me, he's not unconventional because this is what we've done for almost 25 years. So there's a familiarity there that I think makes it a lot of fun and, creates a level of ease and comfort. And we've had a lot of great moments together on the air, but we've also, obviously gotten to know each other very well off the air as well, and built a very, I would like to think, a very, close relationship. Phil is unique in a way, like there's not too much that he will say off the air that he won't say on the air. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why he is so beloved, because he's not going to always break things down as like scientifically, maybe as like going to hockey broadcasting analyst 101 class, right? That's not really Phil. Phil is reacting to what he's seeing, but he's also giving kind of an unvarnished opinion, a raw opinion.
Right.
And that speaks to the fans of the team that we are covering. But there is probably some non-crossover there. So like there's some things that he will say to me that he won't say on the air. And I think that comes from trust and, familiarity and all of that. So he's not only been a great broadcast partner, he's been a great friend. But, Phil is there's a reason why Phil was able to get this team down here. Right? I mean, like, Phil has a larger than life personality. He just does. People gravitate to him. We're sitting in the booth before the game, and depending on who's coming in, either with the visiting team or just there, invariably you're going to see, like, if it's a member of hockey royalty, that person is coming into the booth to see Phil.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they say hi to me, sometimes they don't. But like, they always seek out Phil.
Right.
Because if you are a mover and a shaker in this sport, and you have any kind of like stake to plant in this sport, and you have an impact in this sport, and you are in the Tampa Bay Lightning press box, you are coming to see Phil Esposito, without a doubt. And he knows everybody, right? So that's been fun too. To see him interact with old teammates or old people that he's crossed paths with through the years. Anyway.
It's amazing too, because like where I stand during the intermissions with Phil, and I feel like sometimes he comes over to me so I can kind of guard him from that sometimes, because it is a lot, because it's almost like people seeing the Pope, right? It's like people come over to kiss the ring because they want to, and it's so wild that so many different people from walks of life. Last night, the general manager of the Utah Mammoth came over and said hello. I remember one time he was in the press box and it was like him and Scotty Bowman and Larry Robinson. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I think there's 27 Stanley Cup rings having that conversation right there. And as I walk by, Phil hit checks me and he goes, "You're from New York. You can take it." Like he's just one of a kind. And you guys do such a great job, and you're such a voice of the fans. And your style is so unique to yourself. And Dave, you get into it, man. And how did you adapt your style? Were you, when you were in the minors, were you that, you're so loud and like you're into it, man. You're not a guy that when the team scores the goal. Were you like that in the minors too, or was that something that got bigger in the pros?
No. I mean, I've been like that since I first put on a headset. I made two conscious choices about how I wanted to broadcast games when I started. And I actually did a couple of games in high school. This is before, now high schools have this stuff. When I was in high school, there really wasn't much of it at all. So the fact that I got to do a couple of games, I think I did a couple of football games, and I went to a school that had a hockey team. So I might have done a hockey game or two. I didn't really start in earnest until I got to college. So let's just say when I got to college and I started doing it and like getting really interested in doing it, and maybe thinking about, maybe I want to do this professionally, figure out a way to get a job to do it. Okay, what kind of a broadcaster do I want to be? And I made two conscious choices. You and I may have had this conversation before. I'm not sure if we have. I apologize for repeating it, but maybe some of your listeners haven't heard this. So on radio, of course, there's no picture. So I made the choice to try and paint as accurate a picture as I could, and that's through all sports, but hockey especially, because the puck is moving so quickly that, I mean, football is more of a static sport. You can track, like 35, 40, 45, 50, running left. I mean, you can describe it, but then there's the tackle and you have the new, down marker, right? The new line of scrimmage. Hockey, often the puck is always moving. So I was thinking, like, how can I describe it in a way that paints a picture? But I wanted to be erring on the side of being kind of uber descriptive rather than throwing kind of commentary in there and getting off the puck. There's nothing wrong with doing that. I just made the conscious choice that I wanted it to be more of a photograph in time. Right. So my play-by-play, it's not complicated. I'm usually saying, like, who has the puck, where is that player, and what's he doing? And usually by the time you get that out, something new has happened. And so it's just like wash, rinse, repeat, right? And I for me, kind of decided how to describe the different areas of the ice, the circles, the points, the corners, near side, far side. Like, one team's right wing is another team's left wing. So how do you distinguish that? The slot, the middle of the ice right in front of the goalie. So as long as you can, like, identify where the puck is and you can keep up with the play, I think that you can create a pretty accurate picture, as long as you're not sounding like an auctioneer. I mean, you can't speak, I don't understand auctioneers when they're doing their thing. So you have to do it in a way that is digestible for the listener. Okay. That was one. The second was growing up as a kid, listening to the announcers for the teams that I liked. And I was born in New York City, but when I was 9, my family moved to suburban Boston, basically. So my earliest teams were some of the New York teams, but really it was the Boston teams, growing up in the late 70s into the 80s, and they had some good teams. I mean, the Celtics were great. The Red Sox had their moments. The Patriots had a couple of moments. The Bruins were good. They weren't, winning cups, but they were competitive. And I followed all of those teams. And what I decided that I wanted to do for myself, because I liked this. I liked announcers for the teams that I followed to show emotion when something good happened for that team. Now, did I want to sound exactly like them? No, I didn't really know how I wanted to sound, and none of them sound like me, really. If you listen to me, you go back and listen to Johnny Most, who did the Celtics. Johnny Most loved the Celtics. Like, I loved listening to Johnny Most because I knew he loved the Celtics, but I don't sound like Johnny Most.
Right.
But the emotion is there. So I basically gave myself permission to say, all right, well, if something exciting happens, I'm going to get excited. And then, you kind of are true to yourself, right? So do I sound the same today as I sounded when I was, 20 when I started? No, probably not. Definitely not. You have a little bit more of a pip squeaky, sound when you start, and you just gain kind of a little bit more, I don't know, culture in your voice through experience. It's a little less frenetic, but I mean, it's probably a moderate change. I even hear like the early days that I was calling games with the Lightning, like that first cup, I think I sound a little different than in cups 2 and 3. I mean, still excited, but just, my range went down a little bit. But that's just me reacting. So it wasn't that I thought I want to sound like this. It was that I want to be free to like get excited for the team that I'm representing. If I were calling some kind of national game where I had no dog in the hunt, let's say, one of the teams wasn't paying my salary, I wasn't broadcasting. And again, when I started, the radio was not like, you couldn't pick up a radio signal 500 miles away unless you were on some like enormous signal. Like, we have fans. We went to Stockholm in 2019, Jay. We have fans. The Lightning have fans in Stockholm. Those fans could listen to our broadcast.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, that couldn't have happened.
Right.
When I started. So you were really broadcasting to your team's fans. It was in your market. And I think the division there was much more clear. Like, opposing fans really weren't hearing my call, right? So I think that emboldened me too. It's like, look, I'm broadcasting to a select group of people who want to hear good things happen for the team that they are cheering for and I'm representing. So that also, I think, factored in. So those are the two kind of tenets, and I've tried to stay true to those through the years.
Yeah, you've done a great job. And one of the things that I marvel at is how you are able to, I mean, it's kind of, it's easy to distinguish between Cirelli and Hagel, but it's not so easy to distinguish between teams that you don't necessarily see. I mean, we can all distinguish between Marchand and Kachuk, right? Because we see the Panthers so much, but especially a game like last night, how do you prepare for a game against an opponent that you're only going to see twice a year? Is that something that you're keeping an eye on throughout the, and we've talked about this a little more, but again, I want to enlighten the audience here. Is this something that you do extra homework maybe preceding a game against Utah, or is this something where you're kind of keeping an eye on over the year what guys look like? Because you and I have talked about the little nuances, color of the stick, type of gloves, the type of gait when they're skating, like everything goes into kind of identifying players that you're not seeing on a night-to-night basis.
Yeah, it's a good question, Jay. So I think the baseline, like, prerequisite requirement to do play-by-play for hockey especially, you have to be able to identify the players. If you cannot identify the players, you're going to fall behind the play, and then you're like running up a muddy hill in slippers. Like, it's just not going to happen, right? So however you need to learn it, you have to learn it. Okay, having said that, just from that standpoint, the NHL is way easier than any other league. Like you just said, and you're not being asked to do play-by-play in the NHL, but you're just like, yeah, I can tell the difference between Marchand and Tkachuk. Well, most hockey fans can like look at a team, be like, oh yeah, that's Connor McDavid. Well, like, this is my job. So, like, first of all, I need to know who all the players are, but also, once a player gets to the NHL, a player usually stays in the NHL for a little while, even if they're not staying on the same team. So once I've seen a player a few times, I do recognize the player, even if that player is wearing a different uniform. If you like drop me into some like rink down the street and ask me to do a high school game where I haven't seen either team and don't know any of the players, that would be a much more difficult lift, even though the game would move way more slowly, right?
Yeah, no,
like keeping up with the play would be less of a challenge, but remembering all of the player names would be more of a challenge. So just from the standpoint of like, there really is not a lot of turnover within the NHL from players who are new to the NHL. We have some, but like Utah comes in. All right, who is new to the NHL on Utah? Was there one player in last night's game that I'd never seen before? Yes. Daniil Boot, number 19.
Yes.
Okay. So he's a
and he
first
kind of
round
stood
pick.
out too because he was a bigger right-handed shot. Like,
yeah. And I mean, his name is Boot. Like, it's not
right.
I mean, even if it's more than one syllable, you know, you
No,
have
but
to learn it, right?
Yeah.
So it's marginal, right? I've seen Dylan Guenther play. I've seen Clayton Keller play. I've seen Sergachev, right? I've seen Nate Schmidt. So actually, the more challenging part is less about like, I don't know this team, because most teams, even if they're playing in the West and we see them twice a year, you know, they have players that they're most of the players I would recognize. Where it's challenging is where you have two players who basically are playing the same position who have very similar numbers. That's where it becomes challenging. So last night, I just used these two guys as an example. Sergachev wears 98, Nate Schmidt wears 88. They're both lefty Ds. Now, I know Sergachev well enough that I didn't really have a problem identifying him as opposed to Schmidt. I could tell the difference. But I had the benefit of having seen Sergachev, you know, every game that he played up until a couple of years ago. Somebody else might be a little more challenging. Now, Sergachev wears an A. Nate Schmidt doesn't. So, like, you know, there's certain things that you can use. They both used white tape. So that's another one. Like if two guys look similar, but one is wearing, you know, has white tape and the other guy has black tape, that's more challenging. I'll give you one, Jay. I use this quite a bit. Two guys are playing the same line for the Lightning. Pontus Holmberg and Zemgus Girgensons. Now, if you're standing next to them, there's a difference. Girgensons is taller than Holmberg. We grew up in the press box. One wears 28, one wears 29. They play in the same line. And I didn't actually realize this until that 322 penalty minute game in Sunrise at the end of the preseason, because Holmberg hadn't played in the preseason. He got hurt. So he comes into the preseason. I knew that they wanted him and Girgensons to play together. That was kind of the expectation. In the first period of that game, before Girgensons got hurt, because Verhaeghe boarded him, I was like, oh my gosh, like they look identical to me. And they are going to be playing on the same line. So what's the difference? I hope that neither one of them changes this. Holmberg has black tape and Girgensons has kind of like off-white tape. It's not bright white, but if I'm like, who is that? I can look at the tape and I can tell. And also now I'm starting to like, Holmberg is a little more hunched over. Like he looks like he does have a backpack on his back. Like their skating style is a little different, but in a pinch, you know, it's not obvious because 28 and 29 are, and they're both lefties, right? So that's where it's challenging. Stadium series we got coming up. I remember this when we played in Boston at the start of the year, because some of these guys were a little new. So the Bruins have on their right side defense, Henry Jokiharju wears number 20, Andrew Peeke wears number 26. So, you know, the 6 and the 0, like you're standing next to it, you can see the difference. You're way up. It's a little trickier, right? I don't know these guys. Like I know both of them. I've seen them play. Jokiharju was in Chicago and Buffalo. Peeke was in Columbus. But you put them on the same team where one guy is going to be on for one shift and then the other guy is going to come on for the next shift, and they don't always stick with the same partners. I mean, you may have a weird line change or whatever. That's where it becomes challenging. That's where you kind of have to go into your bag of tricks and be like, who is that, right? maybe pregnant pause a little bit, or just guess.
Right.
That's okay too. So it's not so much like I don't know these players. It's like these two players look very similar on this team, and they could be in the same spot on the ice depending on the situation.
Dave, before I let you go, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about the team. I mean, you look at the game last night. I think this was kind of the perfect. You kind of rinse that last game out. I was joking around with Dave Randolph or Brian Engblom and their call. The game against Columbus, it was like, all right, let's get out of here. They scored another goal. Let's just get out. But I thought this is just what the doctor ordered last night, a 2-0 shutout. What would you say about the team's play? Because I remember talking to Yanni Gordon. He's like, Jay, this is how we have to play. He's like, we have to focus on our end first because nothing can happen long-term unless we focus on keeping the puck out of our net and playing well in the defensive zone. Obviously they didn't start out the season the way that they wanted, but man, especially after this last streak that they've been on, Dave, they're kind of going back to the bread and butter of what has made this team so successful in the last decade, haven't they?
Well, I think most NHL coaches want their teams to defend well. I mean, I do believe that. Fair. Yeah, that is usually on the top of the wish list, and John Cooper is no exception. So if you recall, it was 2 seasons ago. They had a great offensive year. They were number 1 in the NHL in the power play. They made the playoffs. That was the year they lost to the Panthers the first time of the 2 back-to-back losses to the Panthers. But coming out of that year, Julian Breezewell was like, we need to get better 5-on-5 defensively. We need to get better defensively, period. So, they were able to reacquire McDonough. Vasilevsky came back. He was healthy. But I think that they really had a commitment to cutting down on high danger chances against. Right. And last year, the proof is in the pudding. They were a top 5 defensive team. They were a top 5 team 5-on-5 ratio, which is another really important stat. That, to me, is one of the bellwether stats that can be predictive of playoff success. I mean, yes, some good 5-on-5 teams will lose in the first round. But if you're a bad 5-on-5 team in the playoffs, if you don't improve, you're going to have to find, you have a very, narrow path to success because most of hockey is played 5-on-5, right? So the Lightning got better defensively. They got better 5-on-5 last year. They got better. They did not have a good series against the Panthers defensively, particularly games 1 and 5. But I think the hope was, remember, Julian said, if we can come out of this year with the same numbers that we just had, I think he said it at the end of the year, or maybe the beginning of this year, looking back at last year, he's like, I'll be thrilled. Well, their numbers are even better this year. Defensively, they're number 2. Only Colorado is better. 5-on-5 ratio, they're number 2. Only Colorado is better. And so Yanni is right. The priority is cutting down goals against, cutting down chances against. Now, last night's game was going to be a tricky game. Based on how late they got back from Columbus. I was not on that trip. I called the last few games on the road off the monitor because my wife was recovering from surgery, but she's all good. And the next road game, which will be the end of February, I'll be back on the road. So in a way, I'm like, Brian saw me last night. He's like, you were so lucky you did not come to Chicago. He's like, I haven't been that cold in 50 years. And your 10-year-old self is laughing at you when you're growing up in Winnipeg. He was like, it was the wind. I walked outside. I came right back in. I'm like, well, it is the windy city. And of course, they had a snowstorm in Columbus. So it was a tough travel weekend. Cold, snow, delays. They landed at 3 a.m. So as much as the previous dozen games, 10 were on the road, 3 different time zones, 3 sets of back-to-backs. They're like, okay, now we're starting a 6-game homestand. This first game was almost a continuation to me of the 10 of 12. It was the third and 4 nights. They had the weird travel after the Saturday game. Utah was rolling. Utah had gotten here on Saturday afternoon, basically, early evening. They played a Saturday afternoon game in Nashville. They were here way before the Lightning. And you saw it play out that way for much of, I would say for sure, the first 30 minutes.
No doubt.
Did Karel Vejmelka make some good saves in the first period? Yes. Did Andrei Vasilevsky make harder saves in the first 30 minutes, though? Yes, for sure. So they leaned on Vasi more than they probably have leaned on their goalies in a lot of these other games. And he came through for them. And then they got the power play goal. So I thought the second half of their game, they kind of grabbed the game back a little bit. I thought the way the Lightning are defending, in many ways, it's what they're doing with the puck. Like, that's what makes the gourd line so effective, in part. Like, if they have to defend without the puck, they can do it. But when they get the puck, the other team can't get it back, right? So we saw a lot of that, or we saw more of that in the third period, where the Lightning had the lead and they forced Utah to play without the puck more. But I thought it was a gutsy win based on the circumstances, based on the quality of the opponent, based on how the opponent had them on their heels for much of the first 30 minutes. I mean, they could have been down in that game, and then it would have been a slog because you're chasing. Instead, Vasi kind of held the fort. It's funny hearing him afterward. He's like, I like games where I see shots, but not many chances. I'm like, I think he saw some chances there. They were tough saves. So
funny. He's so funny.
But they kind of got things settled down after they got the lead. And now this isn't going to be continued. I always knew or felt like now they get 2 days. They play Thursday, got the outdoor game. Like, they'll get rejuvenated. It was just this first game was going to be tricky. And as I said at the beginning of our talk, Utah's a good team. Like, they brought it last night. They could have won that game. They could have at least gotten a point. So that's in part, I think, why they were so frustrated at the end of the night, because they probably played better than what they got. But that happens sometimes.
That is right, man. And that's what the Lightning have been doing. They kind of, even if they're not playing their best hockey, they find a way. I want everybody out there to make sure you know about Blind Squirrel. We had you on a couple of months ago talking about it. You can find it on Amazon. I have my copy here at the house. Go check it out. An incredible story that Dave put together. It was 2020, man, 2024, Dave. It's 2026 now.
I know.
Holy smokes, man. Time has flown. It has flown. It's just been unbelievable. The voice of the Tampa Bay Lightning, Dave Mishkin. Mish, thank you so much for everything that you've done for me in my career and for all that you do for our fans here in the Tampa Bay area. You are the best, and we'll talk to you again soon, buddy. I'll see you Thursday.
All right. Talk to you soon, Jay.
Thanks, buddy. Doesn't get much better than that, does it? Unbelievable chat with our good pal Dave Mishkin. Really one of one. What a great guy, man. Unbelievable wealth of knowledge, and being able to sit there and just listen to him and go about his business. He's so smart. He's like freaking Yale grad. He's just the way that he just says it so casually. Yeah, just, I remember players in the league. If they, I remember this guy. I remember it's not so easy. It is not so easy to remember these players. I have a little bit of a photographic memory when it comes to things like that, so I can see it. But man, think about those people that say, I'm not good with names. I'm not good with numbers. Mish can't just be good. He's got to be great with names and great with numbers. Wow. Unfreaking believable. Again, Mish is one of one. Hockey royalty is right. Phil is truly the godfather. A great discussion. Chan, I freaking love this guy. Mishkin, more like Mish King. $5 super chat for our guy Chan. Mish King is goated for going with the handheld mic. You got that right, pal. Dave, this is from our pal King Cook. What's up, buddy? Dave, do you do the slow jams hour on the local radio station? You definitely have the voice, my man. I'd love to hear him and Ronnie Knight try and lane together. Score Kucherov. Thank you, Dustin Smith. I always love catching up with him. And then thank you very much, Rolly, Lady Evil, with a $5 super chat. What a great interview. The voice of the Tampa Bay Lightning last night, game 2000 for the voice of the Tampa Bay Lightning, Dave Mishkin, and his partnership with Phil Esposito. Again, one of one. Just to be up in the press box, to be able to hang out with those guys and to be able to talk hockey. A lot of fun. A lot of fun, and it's not something I take for granted at all. All right, before we get to our guy Rob Maaddi from the Associated Press, who is going to join us to talk about the Super Bowl and the NFL job openings, and also he has a vote for the Baseball Hall of Fame. So I wanted to get his 2 cents on that as well, because we know that Carlos Beltran and Andrew Jones will join Jeff Kent as part of the class of 2026. Heading into Cooperstown. But I wanted to get into this discussion real quick before we get into that. And then I wanted to talk about Darren Raddysh. So let's talk about the future of Darren Raddysh. We reported weeks ago after the fireside chat with Lightning general manager Julian Brisebois that he said Darren Raddysh was in line for a life-changing contract. And I got to tell you, I'm not the only person, but walking out of the room that day, I think a lot of us agreed that it was probably not going to happen with the Tampa Bay Lightning. You just signed J.J. Moser to that extension. You know that money's going to be kicking in next year. And you know that a guy like Darren Raddysh is making under $1 million a year now is going to get paid. Again, Julian says life-changing contract. But since then, this dude has been on an absolute heater. And now after the power play goal last night, which gave the Lightning a 1-0 lead and turned out to be the game-winning goal, he's got more goals on the man advantage than any other defenseman in the National Hockey League. And I'm watching this guy play, and I'm thinking to myself, how does Julien Brisebois not find a way to bring him back to the Bolts next season? They had such a tough time on the power play figuring out what that next phase was going to look like after Steven Stamkos. They didn't really figure it out last year. They brought Oliver Bjorkstrand in to be kind of that missing piece, and now they've moved him to the middle with Braden Point out. And the big change to the man advantage and the reason why it's been working so well these last couple of weeks is because Darren Raddysh right there at the point, being aggressive, Nikita Kucherov looking for him, Raddy finding a shot, hitting the net. And again, as I articulated, 8 power play goals, number 1 defenseman in the National Hockey League. The power play is such a huge part of this Tampa Bay Lightning organization. And the number 1 reason why it's successful every year is Nikita Kucherov. Don't get me wrong. But the number 1 reason why it's been fixed is because Darren Raddysh. So as I'm watching him and I'm looking at how well he's playing with a guy like J.J. Moser, it's hard for me to believe that he won't be on this team next year. And I know a lot of people will look at J.J. Moser's contract and they'll look at Oliver Bjorkstrand's contract. Well, a lot of people will look at Oliver Bjorkstrand's contract and they'll say, well, that's $5.5 million off the books. Well, let's not forget J.J. Moser, he's going to go up about 3.5. Now, Ryan McDonagh does go down about 2.5. So that kind of helps there. But that would be a lot of money tied up in your blue line. So one topic of discussion that I was having with Eric Erlinson last night, and then DeAndre Lou, our good friend, was having with Mike Olivero just a couple of seats down, ironically enough, was how do you find a way to bring Darren Raddysh back? How do you find a way to keep him with this team? And really, the only answer is to trade a guy like Eric Chernak. You move on from a guy like Cherney, who is making $5.2 million, not just this year, but the next 5. But is that something that Julien Brisebois wants to do? Is that something that we'll all be comfortable with? We know the difference between these two guys. And if you don't, we're going to describe that now. We'll discuss it. Because let's not forget, it's not so easy to just say, well, of course, pay Darren Raddysh. Earlier this season, Darren Raddysh was a healthy scratch. This season, we're not talking about 2 years ago. We're talking about this year. Darren Raddysh was a healthy scratch when everybody was healthy. We know that partnership with Ryan McDonagh and Eric Chernak, a lot of people believe that's one of, if not the best shutdown pair in the National Hockey League. They have proof with 2 Stanley Cups on their resume. And you sign Ryan McDonagh to an extension. Don't think that his partnership and the way that Eric Chernak plays with Ryan McDonagh had nothing to do with that. You're hoping that by having those guys together, that for the rest of Ryan McDonagh's time with the Tampa Bay Lightning, he is going to be playing with Eric Chernak because he's signed through the 28-29 season. Does Darren Raddysh make as much of an impact when he's playing third line minutes or third pairing minutes? I don't think so. But you see it now when he's playing with J.J. Moser as your top pair, that he's been able to rise to the challenge. He's playing well 5-on-5. He's playing well on the man advantage. So that's kind of the conundrum that Julian Brisebois is in right now. And they probably have the most depth on the blue line out of any team in the NHL. Just think about it. You have Hedman, McDonough, and Emil Lilleberg that aren't even in the lineup right now. You have Moser, you have Raddysh, you have Dastu is also not in the lineup. You have Chernak, you have Carlisle. Groshev played last night. You've seen Santini. You've seen, like, my God. And Declan Carlisle was playing his ass off last night, pissing off Sean Durzi. Funny how I get some weird Mammoth fans creeping onto my timeline complaining about Declan Carlisle, who's played 34 games in the NHL, headlocking and taking down Sean Durzi because he was jabbing at Andrei Vasilevsky. Listen, if you want a non-contact sport, go play chess. Sorry. But it's not so easy if you're Julian Brisebois. You could tell when we had that fireside chat with him, he did not know how to gauge what that contract was going to look like. And if Julian doesn't know, I don't know if anybody knows right now. Because you can compare it to other guys and say, oh, well, they can pay this guy this or that guy. Well, Sean Durzi made this or this. It's not so easy, man. Look at both ends of the spectrum. This guy was a healthy scratch on a team that has playoff aspirations, cup win. They have Stanley Cup aspirations. And when everybody was healthy, John Cooper and his coaching staff did not believe that he was one of the top 6 defensemen to give them a chance to win. Now, he's playing at a Norris Trophy level. That is not hyperbole. If we are going to judge defensemen and winning that trophy based primarily on points, he's got more power play goals than any other defenseman in the NHL. He's got 8. You're talking conversation of Cale Makar and guys like that. Point-wise, he's there all the time. He's there with a guy like Nikita Kucherov playing at a high level. So it's not so cut and dry that you're just going to move on from Darren Raddysh. It's also not so cut and dry that you could just get rid of a guy like Erik Chernak. Now, what's the difference between those two guys? We know that Chernak is a guy that plays a very physical game. He's a tough guy to move in front of the net. And you saw his absence when the Lightning lost to the Leafs a couple years ago in the first round. That dirty hit from Michael Bunting. And then at the end of games, it was Ian Cole out there protecting the front of the net, not Erik Chernak. And you have seen how much better Erik Chernak has played since Ryan McDonough was reacquired from the Nashville Predators. Now, we do know Chernak's got a little bit of an injury history. It seems like every year he gets banged up. So that plays into it as well. But let's say you move on from Chernak and you keep Raddysh. And then Raddysh play deteriorates when Hedman comes back and Dastu comes back. And maybe he slips a little bit on the power play. Then you're going to go, holy smokes. Because that recipe has already worked, Chernak and McDonough. Not just in the regular season, but in the postseason as well. It is not an easy decision for Julian Brisebois. I do not envy him whatsoever. And again, Julian's a capologist. This guy knows the cap inside and out, forwards and backwards. And the fact that he articulated it the way he did during our fireside chat, life-changing contract. You're talking about a big leap from a guy that's making under $1 million this year. And you almost use that vernacular almost as like a safety net and almost like a way of saying, like, there's no way we can bring him back. How can we bring him back? I know the cap's going to go up. And again, I know you're probably not going to bring Bjorkstrand back. And I know McDonough's contract goes down. But again, if it was that easy, I don't know if Julian would have stated it the way he did to us. But again, watching that game last night, man, I'm telling you, I find it hard to believe that Darren Raddysh doesn't come back next year. But if you bring him back on that type of money, whether it's $5, $6, $7 million a year, you're paying him to be a top pair defenseman. You're not paying him to be on that third pairing. So what does that mean for Victor Hedman when he comes back? Who does he play with? Charles Lardestou is going to be in there. Emil Lilleberg is going to be in there. What happens with Max Crozier? That's why John Cooper gets paid the big bucks. You go Moser and Raddysh. I mean, if you pay him this money, you're going Moser and Raddysh as your top pair. That's what you're saying. If you end up doing this, let's say you pay Raddysh and you move on from Chernak, you're saying that Darren Raddysh and JJ Moser is your top D pair for the next 4 to 5 years. You comfortable with that? Tough question. Because then McDonough will probably play with Dastou. And then Victor Hedman will play with what? Crozier? Lilleberg? You pay Raddysh that money. You're talking about Victor Hedman, your captain, making $8 million a year as your third pairing defenseman. It's a lot of money on your blue line. A lot of money. So it's easy to say, just pay the man, but it ain't your checkbook. All right, guys, we're going to keep this conversation rolling. We're going to switch it up. We're going to talk to our guy, Rob Maaddi from the AP. He's a senior NFL writer joining us here on the program. What's going on, buddy? How are you?
I'm doing well, man. How are you, Jay?
Good, buddy. Thank you so much for joining me today. We'll talk some NFL. I want to also talk to you a little Baseball Hall of Fame action as well. I mean, you look at the Joe Brady news coming up today. I mean, with Josh Allen. I mean, the continuity, I think, is the big key. Surprising at all that Josh Allen is involved with these discussions, Rob?
No, I think if you have a franchise quarterback, he certainly should be involved in
Right.
in any conversations. So you look at a guy like Josh and what he's been able to accomplish in the NFL, and it's crazy how we look at that class of 28 quarterbacks, and I wrote this story too yesterday, how Sam Darnold's the first one in that class to get to a Super Bowl as a starter. He's already been there as a backup, and now he's going to be the first one to go there as a starter. So I think with Josh in every quarterback in every situation, Jay, football's the ultimate team sport, and you need the pieces around you. You need the supporting cast. And what Sam Darnold has shown us is you really need the coaching. You need that coaching that can really help elevate your game. We saw that with Baker Mayfield. We saw how he performed with Dave Canales. We saw how Liam Cohn took him to another level. And then we saw how kind of he took a step back this past year under Josh Grizzard as the offensive coordinator. So I think when you have someone like Josh Allen, who is a franchise quarterback, who is the expectation is winning Super Bowls, and the expectation is to be able to do it and do it for another decade plus even, he's got to have a lot of say and a lot of input.
Rob, what job do you think is going to get filled first, the Raiders gig or the Browns gig? I feel like if I ask you about the Browns, you need to write an essay or some thesis paper. It's just so wild there in Cleveland. Like if anything's weird in the NFL, just go to Berea over there in the Cleveland area. It's just so strange. And I'm a little surprised that the Raiders job hasn't been filled yet. I don't know if they're waiting. I thought Mike McDaniel with Brady, possibly Fernando Mendoza, Bowers, Genty, that might make the most sense. What do you make of those two gigs?
I did not think Mike McDaniel was a fit for Tom Brady. Just from knowing Tom and knowing what Mike McDaniel, he's a quirky guy. He's an offensive innovator, right? And he's not fit, but he's just different. And
Yeah.
I don't know that would have been a fit for Tom. And I spoke to a lot of people in northern cities who were looking at McDaniel and even as an offensive coordinator. I thought he's a guy who he's a California guy. And I thought that made sense for him to be with the Chargers. I think that Clint Kubiak might be the guy that the Raiders are now waiting on. It should be an attractive position that you're getting the number one pick. You're going to get an opportunity with the Heisman Trophy winner, with a national champion, with a guy who's polished and mature and is ready to step into the spotlight and the limelight and everything that comes with being a number one overall pick in Mendoza. So I think the Raiders' job, and especially when you have Tom Brady there and you have his input and his influence, it should be an attractive job. So I don't fault teams, Jay, for taking their time, for looking to hiring a head coach is the most important position on a franchise in an organization. If you bring in the wrong guy, it can set you back. Look at the Patriots a couple years ago. They went right into their succession plan with Gerard Mayo, and they failed miserably. And they were 4-13. And credit to Robert Kraft, who moved quickly. And I don't think he knew Mike Vrabel was going to be available after. And obviously, he was already sitting out the year, and he was in Cleveland. So he was able to move quickly and make that happen. And look where they are now. The Cleveland job, to me, it's understandable why it's taken long, and that, as you alluded to, some of the things with the organization, and you hear about the 7-hour interviews with Jimmy Haslam and the essays and all that. I don't think all of that is too crazy, because you want to make sure you have the right guy. But if you're doing things completely out of the norm that other organizations aren't doing, there's a difference between being a trendsetter and then being completely off the rails, right? And you don't want to be you want to be front and center, think outside the box, and set trends and do things differently and have success. But when you've been the Cleveland Browns and you've won one playoff game this century, and that was with a quarterback you couldn't wait to get rid of in Baker Mayfield. I think you need to figure it out, and you need to take a step back and try and do it a little bit more traditional, perhaps. And they've got a lot of talent on the defensive side of the football. They don't have an answer yet at quarterback. I don't know that we saw enough out of Shedeur Sanders to warrant him being labeled the starting quarterback going into next year. He certainly should get an opportunity to compete. Dylan Gabriel should get an opportunity to compete too as well. But they're in the market for another QB, and a lot's got to be determined from there. And I think when you're a head coach looking in, to me, this is going to be a guy who probably didn't have other options, an offensive-minded coach who wasn't going to get a head coaching position somewhere else, or maybe they end up elevating Jim Schwartz, who also hasn't been interviewed. Now, there are guys who haven't gotten interviews anywhere else. Look at Liam Cohn. I spoke to him last week, and he's like, he only interviewed for Jacksonville. They hit a home run. He didn't interview anywhere else. They hit a home run. Nick Sirianni, a few years back, only interviewed with the Eagles. All he did was go to the Super Bowl in his second year and win one in his fourth.
Yeah, that's a great point, man. One of the things I loved, I retweeted as many as humanly possible. I thought it was so awesome that you had these guys on video when you let them know that they were first team All-Pro. And I mean, what was that like to be able to have these conversations with these top tier NFL players? And which one was your favorite?
Oh, man. So I've been doing this for 4 years now, Jay, since I've been in this position, in this role. And I thought it would be really cool 4 years ago to start it. And it's gotten really exciting because the guys don't know, and the teams are very collaborative with me. And some teams think outside the box. The Buccaneers last year with Tristan Wirfs, I thought that was a phenomenal idea that Danielle, Danielle and Mike and the staff there who do a tremendous job. They were like, hey, how about we do it this way? And you get his kid involved. And that was really cool. But obviously I'm in Tampa, so I can't be there physically with all of these other players to tell them. So I thought the one that stood out to me was Will Anderson with Houston. So that was really neat in that it's gotten to a point, Jay, where some guys know if their PR staff or their agent or somebody says, hey, you're going to get on a call with Rob Maaddi today from the AP. They're like, oh, shoot. Like I couldn't do it with CMC. He would have known right away. So there are certain guys that would know. And in Houston, they were like, Well, we're getting ready for the wild card game, and Laura Rutledge is supposed to is setting up. She's going to be the sideline reporter. She's going to talk to some of the guys. They told Will that he was going to get on with Laura Rutledge, and instead my mug pops up, and I get to tell him that he made All Pro. And his reaction was so cool. He jumped up out of his seat. I think ESPN played it a couple times too in the course of their broadcast and on one of their shows. So that was really neat. Puka Nakua had an awesome reaction because I told him he was unanimous. He was not only an All Pro, he was first team. He was first team All Pro and got all 50 votes, right? And he was like, no way. He starts thinking of. He made a comparison to Steph Curry and I was like, yeah, it makes sense. So Matthew Stafford was really his first time in 17 years in the NFL.
Wow.
You would have thought Stafford along the way, but there's so much competition, right? When he was playing early, there's Brady, there's Manning, there's Drew Brees, there's all these guys. So it took him 17 years. So it's probably one of my favorite parts of the year is being able to sit down and do that. And then I get an opportunity to a lesser extent to tell a guy he's a finalist, but it's not quite the same thing. It's not because it's not like you made it. It's you're a
Right.
finalist for one of the awards. So there was a cool reaction to some of those last week too as well, but a little bit different. You know, you tell a guy he made it as a finalist, he could still end up third, fourth, fifth. You don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's still awesome, man. There's so many negative things on social media nowadays and so many things that are divisive. That was just it's one of the best things that I've seen every year you do it. It's freaking awesome, man.
Thank you.
What's your take on the Super Bowl, man? I mean, obviously, we look at Mike Vrabel and the job that he's done in year one. I mean, just both of these coaches. It's gonna set us. It's set such an unrealistic expectation for these coaches looking for a new head coach. Hey, it didn't take these guys very long, right? We want everything in a vacuum and in a microwave nowadays, anyway. But I mean, a lot of people are looking at, I think, the juggernaut that Seattle has. They look unbelievable, and they can really put up some points. And then they look at New England, you know, one of the, if not the lowest scoring team to ever represent a team in the Super Bowl. How can it be different? How can New England really give themselves a puncher's chance to be able to dethrone Sam Darnold and the Seahawks?
Jay, I'll start out by telling you I was wrong about Sam Darnold, and I know he's had a lot of doubters. He's been labeled a bust. He's been discarded. He's been traded, released, moved on. Won 14 games last year with the Minnesota Vikings, and they're like, "Yeah, well, we got this J.J. McCarthy kid, so we don't think you're the future." Won 14 games, and then moves on to wins 14 games. Last week, even. I mean, as far as last week, and I'm picking the games, and I got to pick every game. I'm like, this to me comes down to Matthew Stafford versus Sam Darnold, and I trust Matthew Stafford in crunch time, and I think Sam Darnold's going to make that one mistake that's going to cost the Seahawks the game. Well, guess what? He didn't. I was flat out wrong. I'm not one of those people who's going to sit there and just ignore. Like, hey, when I'm right, I'll tell you. When I'm wrong, flat out wrong. He was phenomenal in that game. 346 yards, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers, especially considering the 3 previous games he played against the Rams. There were a lot of struggles. So he's doing a fantastic job. And losing Charbonnet, I thought might catch up to him against the Rams. And it didn't. And Walker was tremendous. And JSN is one of the great receivers that we'll see in this game. He's a generational type receiver. And that defense is so great on all 3 levels. They've got guys on Leonard Williams in the interior line, Ernest Jones and at linebacker, and Witherspoon and Eamon Worry in the back end at defensive backs. So they're a tough, stingy defense. When you look at the Patriots, what we've seen out of them offensively in the playoffs is not what we've seen in the regular season. They averaged 28.8 points a game. I mean, this is a team that was scoring points, and Drake May's an MVP finalist, an Offensive Player of the Year finalist for a reason. He had an excellent year, and I think they've been a little bit of some circumstances in the playoffs. Chargers were a tough defense that they faced. Then the Texans, who are a tremendous defense, probably they were number 1 across the board in yards allowed. And this week in Denver, in that climate, another great defense in that weather, in that climate. They just had to navigate that second half. So I don't think what we certainly haven't seen the best of the Patriots offense, and Drake's certainly been able to make some plays, extensive plays with his legs. And going into this Super Bowl, you got 2 teams that are well balanced, good offense, good defense, can run the ball, can pass the ball, can stop the run, can stop the pass, don't give up a lot of points, scored a lot of points, excluding this playoff stretch for the Patriots. I'm not ready. I'm going to wait till next week, till I'm out there, till I get to talk to the guys, till I get a vibe
Right.
for it. Because sometimes you feel that you can see nerves in some guys' faces. You can see confidence in others. You can see overconfidence in some instances, and you can see that. So I do think, like, I looked at the number and it was 5. I'm certainly probably leaning towards taking the Patriots to cover, and I'm not sure yet which way I go as far as who wins. I will say I think the last 3 Super Bowls have been won outright by the underdog.
Yeah.
So that's if you're a Patriot fan and you're looking at the playoffs and going, we got no shot, you might want to think again. They haven't been an underdog in a Super Bowl since Brady's first one, when they were double-digit underdogs against the Rams. So and we know how that played out. So I'm expecting a close, tight game, and hopefully that's what we get in Santa Clara.
Yeah, I remember that Super Bowl like it was yesterday, and Brady putting his hands on his head, the greatest show on turf, and Vinatieri winning that one for sure. I want to ask you about the Bucs. Todd Bowles, you surprised that the Buccaneers brought him back, and what do you think about the hiring of Zac Robinson to take over as OC?
Yeah, I like Zac Robinson. I thought there was a lot of interest in him, certainly as an offensive coordinator, and the success that he's had. Obviously, a guy that's worked with Baker Mayfield in L.A., and it makes a lot of sense, and it's a great hire. Know a lot of teams that didn't end up with Zac Robinson that are pretty upset about that. As far as Todd Bowles, not too surprised in that he's got a contract. He's got the 3 years remaining on it. I thought earlier in the year, midway through the season, as I was just talking to some people, had a conversation with Ed Glazer at one point, and he was just telling me how they moved on from Tony Dungy, and he's probably the most important person, I believe he called him, in the history of the franchise. Yet they moved on from Tony. They moved on from Gruden after he won a Super Bowl and had it wasn't even a losing year. It was just a year where they failed to make the playoffs by losing out towards the end and still had a winning record. So I thought, considering all that could happen, that they might move in a different direction. And usually it's either you blow it up, or if you want to give the guy, and he's got some time left on his contract, you bring in a whole new coaching staff, and that's the route that they went. I would certainly think that Todd is, and we all like Todd Bowles the person, but I certainly think Todd Bowles the coach is going to be on the hot seat going into this year, and that division's not going to get any easier. I think Carolina, we saw they won the division at 8 and 9, but they're on the rise. I think Atlanta with Kevin Stefanski, he's been a 2-time coach of the year. I think they've got talent on that defense, and they've got some playmakers on offense. I think they're going to be competitive. Bijan Robinson might be the best player in the NFL. And I was impressed by Tyler Shuck and the New Orleans Saints second half of the season, what they were able to accomplish. I'm going to hop on a call with him shortly and just see what it was like for him playing under Kellen Moore, a guy who had success winning a Super Bowl as a coordinator in Philly, and what that was like, how that translated. Like, Tyler Shuck's a guy who wasn't expected to potentially be the face of the franchise, the quarterback going forward, but he certainly earned that right in the second half as a finalist for Offensive Rookie of the Year. So I think it's going to be a tough division, a lot tougher than it has been. So the Buccaneers got to bring it, and they've got it. They need more pieces, Jay, and I think a little bit of their failures this year is talent and roster. And I remember asking Todd Bowles about this after the season, and he wasn't going to throw Jason Light or anyone in management under the bus, but I just don't think he has the pieces on defense. You need a edge rusher, and they took a shot on Hassan Riddick, and it didn't work out. You got to bring in an edge rusher who can get to the quarterback, who's disruptive, who's a game changer, who's a game wrecker. They just don't have that, and they're lacking on their front seven on the defensive side.
Rob, before I let you go, I got to ask you about the Baseball Hall of Fame. You actually have a vote, and I before the vote came out, or before the results were revealed, I looked at it, and to join Jeff Kent, Carlos Beltran, and Andrew Jones, and Beltran was a guy that I saw very closely when I lived in New York, playing for the Mets and playing for the Yankees, and a switch hitter who had that incredible year incredible postseason with Houston, and just, man, you look at the stats compared to other center fielders, it's just not a deep position. I mean, you always think back to how it was in the 50s and the 60s with, oh yeah, Duke, and you had Willie, and you had Mickey Mantle, but it's just not the same anymore. And then Andrew Jones, still to this day, at least in the modern era, I've never seen anybody play center field like that, where he played way shallower than the guys in left and right, and he won 10 Gold Gloves. Surprised that those two guys made it. Surprised that somebody else didn't make it. What was your take on those two guys joining Jeff Kent in the class of 2026?
Yeah, I certainly think those two guys belonged in the Hall of Fame and belonged earlier. Jay, I'll never understand why it takes certain guys years to get there. To me, you're a Hall of Famer the first time you appear on the ballot, and if you don't get that vote, what changes over 8 years? What changes over 7 years? You either vote for the guy or you don't. Now, sometimes we're limited and restricted by, and you may see me vote for somebody next year who I didn't vote for this year, but that's because I used up my 10. And some folks will label me a generous Hall of Fame voter. I look at each guy individually. I thought Chase Utley's trending upward, but to me, Chase Utley's a Hall of Famer. Why? Because he was the best second baseman in the National League for about 6 or 7 years. And you look at certain guys from the traditional statistical numbers, and you look at certain guys from the analytical numbers, the WAR and everything else that comes with that. Chase qualifies from the analytical side. He may not have all the traditional numbers, the 3,000 hits and all of those things. And then another guy is Jimmy Rollins, who I think has been just absolutely overlooked in this process. Only 2 shortstops in the history of baseball have more extra base hits. 2, Cal Ripken Jr. and Derek Jeter. Why is he? He's number 3. And not only he's got 400 plus stolen bases, so he's got power, he's got speed, he's won Gold Gloves, he's won a World Series, he's won divisions, he's been an MVP. Yet he keeps getting overlooked because he doesn't have the analytical, the whatever WAR says or whatever that says. He's got he's got the traditional numbers, but he's being held back by voters who are now solely looking at the analytical side of it. And there are other guys. I've always supported the players like A-Rod and Manny Ramirez because I believe it should come down to your numbers and what you were able to accomplish. I don't know who did what and when they did it. And I look back at the 60s and 70s and players who took amphetamines openly and admittedly. Greenies help you with your hand-eye coordination. To me, that helps you hit a baseball a whole lot more than being jacked up and being muscle bound. So I think if you were able to put up the numbers, that's what I'm voting guys on, just to make it fair across the board, because maybe some guys were implicated in certain PEDs and some guys may not have been. And so that's the way I look at it. So it's to me still a clogged ballot, but hopefully. I took a small peek at the incoming class, and I didn't see anything that stood out to me for next year. And then there's certain guys that are on the ballot that it's easy to look at, Jay, and you go like, Nick Markakis, nice dude. I don't know why he's on the Hall of Fame. He's not getting it, and yet he got one, right? He got a vote. Like I want. I openly reveal my ballot all the time, and then they give you an opportunity to check the box, but not everybody does. I think it should be mandatory. It should be revealed. So guys who end up with like Nick Markakis or Alex Gordon, if they get a vote, you need to explain that.
Because then you jeopardize the entire process, right? If you have an argument for a guy, then make it, and you should be able. It should be very freaking thorough. The great Rob Maaddi, thank you, Rob. You make our show a whole heck of a lot better. Continued success on the flag football field as well. I see. I mean, you got the best athletes in the family are the ones that. I mean, the ones are your daughters, right? I mean, what the heck, man?
They're tremendous, man. I'm coaching them in 2 leagues. It's a big week. We got to defend our middle school championship this week. Jay, we're going against a team though that beat us 31-12 in a regular season. So, they're coming after us, man. They're coming after us. I got to get them in position. But I did put a photo out today. If the Pro Bowl games need a quarterback, I know they went to Shador. If anybody else backs out, I could still sling it, man. I've thrown 5 touchdown passes in 1 game at the link. I'm ready. So just let the NFL know.
Listen, your credentials at this point are probably better than Shador Sanders. That's just the way it goes, my friend. Rob Maaddi, at Rob Maaddi. Joe, check him out. Rob, thanks again, buddy. We'll talk to you again soon. Have a great rest of your week.
Appreciate you, man. Take care. Keep up the great work.
Thanks, pal. The great Rob Maaddi. Man, what an unbelievable wealth of knowledge. Just love chatting with him. And his daughters, like the great stuff that he puts on there with them and what they're able to do. It's really, really cool, man. And I'm glad to get to know Rob over the years. Again, such a wealth of knowledge, just an incredible guy that we have here in the Bay Area, and just all the things that he writes about. And I'm a big believer in people that prop up the people that we cover. It's easy, and I get it. You don't want to get too close to it, and people will think like you're biased, and that's why the whole thing with the Liam Cohen and the Jacksonville Reporter kind of rubs some people the wrong way. But I mean, for a guy like Rob, like, he is a dude that, like, he lifts people up. He lifts these athletes up, and I think it's a great thing. I thoroughly enjoy it. All right. Let's talk about what kind of we were just articulating with Shedeur Sanders. And I know that Zac Robinson is kind of speaking right now. Kevin Stefanski responded to Baker Mayfield. Baker's somebody that I have a ton of respect for as a player and as a person. I love rivalries in sports, and obviously Buccaneers Falcons have a great rivalry. It's something that I'm excited about, but I would not get into the specifics of those type of things other than to say I have a ton of respect for Baker as a player, as a person. That's a great team with a great player. Bro. You know what I want? I want him to say something like, you know what? It would have been great if he would have just came out as like, you know what? Baker can suck it. Like, that would have been hilarious. Like, come on, man. We need more things like that. We just talked about Nikita Kucherov yesterday, and embracing the villain role. I mean, that would be pretty badass. I would enjoy that very much so. All right. So one of the things yesterday that we were speaking about was we just talked about this with Rob Maaddi from the AP, and Shedeur Sanders getting named to a Pro Bowl is an absolute joke. Now, this is more about the process than Shedeur himself. Because, listen, I got no beef with Shedeur, and I hope he does well. I hope he gets an opportunity to fight for the starting spot next year in Cleveland. And listen, I don't want anybody to do poorly. I want a guy like this to be able to go out there and do his thing. And it's nothing personal against Shedeur. Not at all. But with that being said, you look at this process, and if it's just based on marketing and it's just based on getting more eyeballs to the product, and it really doesn't have anything to do with the standards or the achievements of a player during a season, you are making a mockery of what the Pro Bowl used to stand for. And this is not something that I think people can take lightly, because Pro Bowl selections factor into these guys getting selected for the Hall of Fame. So if you are going to put guys into the Pro Bowl just based on their name and based on the marketability, based on who their dad is, then Pro Bowl should not be used when we're talking about guys and their eligibility for the Hall of Fame. Because I think about Shedeur Sanders, and then I immediately think about Lavonte David. And people are telling me that Lavonte David is not a Pro Bowler. People are telling me Lavonte David is not a Hall of Famer because of the lack of Pro Bowls. Now, we can have a discussion about Pro Bowls versus all pros. That's a different discussion for another day. But there are people that use the amount of Pro Bowls that a player has when discussing whether he should be voted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And if you're telling me that you are putting guys in there just based on marketability and who their dad is, then what does that say about a guy like Lavonte David? Then if you're making an argument about whether a guy should be in the Hall of Fame or not, then let's use the statistics, the ones that really matter. And let's not use Pro Bowl selections then. if you have no criteria, if there really is no credibility when it comes to whether you're selected as a Pro Bowler or not, then let's talk about the real statistics when it comes to Lavonte David. And let's talk about how many tackles he has. And then let's talk about the interceptions. Let's talk about the sacks. Let's talk about the forced fumbles and the fumble recoveries. And then let's talk about some of the players that are in the same discussion with Lavonte David. When you're talking about the Fred Warners, and when you're talking about the Bobby Wagners, and when you're talking about the Ray Lewises and the Brian Urlachers and the Derek Brooks, when you talk about Lavonte David, I don't want to hear anything anymore about him not being a Hall of Famer based on how many Pro Bowls that he doesn't have, when the Pro Bowl has turned into an absolute mockery. Look at the statistics. Look at the things that matter. So it's being held against Lavonte David because what? He's a good teammate. He's a good citizen. He's not a guy that's getting in trouble off the field. He's not a guy that's pounding his chest and saying, me, 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 me. He's not a guy that's whoring himself out there and doing all these different interviews and doing all these different things, selling himself out to the media, doing all these different interviews, going on Radio Row because he just shuts his mouth and does his job, and he's a legit leader, not just on this team, but in this community for years. He's one of the most beloved players in franchise history. He's going to be a Ring of Honor member. He's a Super Bowl champion. He's got numbers that is up there with guys that are already in the Hall of Fame when it comes to the tackles and the sacks and the interceptions and the fumbles. That's the real discussion that needs to happen. Fine. You want Shedeur in there? You want more eyeballs on the product? Fine. But don't, in that same vein, have a discussion about how a guy needs more Pro Bowlers. A guy needs more Pro Bowls if he wants to be considered for the Hall of Fame. That's bullshit. Bullshit. Shout out to Jose Colon. Appreciate you. Steve in the house. The Pro Bowl has no merit. It's all about who the fans want to see him play, not who performs the best. You're spot on, Steve. Spot on. And that's why when I judge, when it comes to these postseason achievements, it's all about the All-Pros rather than the Pro Bowlers. Because the All-Pros, that's really where it's at. You want to talk about participation trophies and shit here in 2026? That's what the Pro Bowl has turned into. Who do you want to see on your TV playing in a meaningful, useless flag football game? Shedeur Sanders? He of the 7 touchdowns and the 10 interceptions? That's the guy that's a Pro Bowler? Over guys like Trevor Lawrence and some of these other quarterbacks? You got to be shitting me. And again, am I going to lose my lunch over it? Nah, it is what it is. But you have to understand that we had this conversation a couple years ago when Antoine Winfield Jr. was in discussion for Defensive Player of the Year, and he wasn't a Pro Bowler. I think he was an All-Pro that year, but he wasn't a Pro Bowler. I have these conversations with the guys that are in the Pro Football Writers Association. And I ask them about the criteria, about these players in the Hall of Fame. I sit there with Ira Kaufman and D. Orlando Ledbetter, and Ira tells me, hey, the conversations that I had to have about Rondé for years, trying to have different discussions with different players, with Greg Olson and Richard Sherman, and talking to these guys, what do I got to do to convince these voters to get Rondé Barber into the Hall of Fame? Pro Bowls was part of that conversation. So the NFL needs to just let everybody know, what is this all about? Is it about entertainment? Does it not really matter? Does it have, like Steve says, no merit? Have some balls and say it. Because if that's the case, fine. The Pro Bowl is a joke anyway. They've turned it into a flag football game because these guys are playing two-hand touch. And the NFL, the most popular sport entity in this country, people could not stand watching because of the lack of effort that these guys were giving. So they turned it into like a field day that you see at your kid's elementary school at the end of the year. Be honest. Be transparent. I know this is awfully tough for the NFL. They have such a tough time doing that. Be honest. Be transparent. let us know this is just for fun. Fine. Because then we won't use that as criteria of whether a guy should be in the Hall of Fame or not. Mr. Wright, just saw Mike Allstott at the Bolts game last night. Those guys were cut from a different cloth, classier cloth. I saw him out there too. Really, really cool. I posted the video of him firing off the Tesla coils a little while ago. Levante, definitely a Hall of Famer. Anybody says otherwise is just a hater. Benny, Pro Bowl was cool when we had the bench press competition. Please bring back the Sean Taylor days of the Pro Bowl. I can't speak for shit today. I'm sorry. I'm with you. When he laid out that punter, that was badass. And this year, speaking about Levante David, I was up in the press box last game of the year with Ira Kaufman, and I go, look, there's the best linebacker in the entire stadium right there, going to get some coffee. And it was Luke Kuechly. And Ira walks over there to Luke Kuechly, and what does Luke want to talk to Ira about? Why Levante David is a Hall of Famer. Luke Kuechly's probably one of the best linebackers that I've seen in the last 20 years. And the way that guy would read plays, he was just so he would call out the plays before they even happened. That was a bad man. That was a bad man. One of my favorite players to watch, no doubt. It's crazy Shedeur didn't even earn the damn Pro Bowl. It used to be a big deal if a rookie made a Pro Bowl first year. You got that right, pal. Trevor turned down the Pro Bowl players, don't care about it. No, I'm with you, man. They asked the other 7 other quarterbacks before Sanders. Nobody wants the Pro Bowl. It's just for the fans. I'm with you, buddy. Since Pro Bowl means nothing, why can't Rondé play in it? So he's already in the Hall of Fame, but I hear you. Just took a peek at Zac Robinson. He looks and sounds really good and promising. That's our guy, Rolly. And we're going to finish the show today talking about some of the things that he had to say today. All right, we'll play some of these things from our pal Greg Allman from Fox Sports. And here is Zac Robinson talking about his time with Baker Mayfield with the Rams. Let me get this guys for you. All right. Here we go. Boom. Boom, boom. All right. This is Zac Robinson. Here, I'll put this up here too, just so you guys have it. All right. There we go. Bucks OC, Zac Robinson. This is from him a little while ago over at the Advent Health Training Center at One Buccaneer Place. And this is him talking about his relationship with Baker Mayfield. And we know that this is a huge part of why he's here in the Bay.
Sure, it's a big deal. We got Baker in 2022, we've had some injuries at the quarterback spot, and I've known of Baker for a long time. I went to Oklahoma State, he went to Oklahoma, he diced us up every single time, that they played. Have had a ton of respect from him from afar as a player, and then to be able to get him in there and see just the type of worker he was, I'll never forget, we gave him a handful of plays, short week, Thursday night game. So we gave him kind of a menu of plays, and Baker probably tell you about 20 to 25 plays. It was like 10 o'clock at night. He came in the next day, and I saw his notebook. We had a bathroom break. I saw his notebook. He had highlighters everywhere, color-coded. And right away, I was like, okay, I know the player, I know the talent, but he's made of all the right stuff. And so, obviously, that time that we spent together was invaluable during a tough season. He came in, ignited that group, but I'm fired up to work with Bake and the rest of the guys. It's a good group of dudes, and I'm looking forward to it for sure. Sure, it's a big.
Beautiful. That's what you want to see. That's what you want to hear from Zac Robinson. And I had this conversation with somebody last night at the Lightning game, and they were asking me about my thoughts with Zac Robinson. If you missed the chat with Josh Capo from Pewter Report, it's up on my channel here. Go check it out. Incredible in-depth conversation about Zac Robinson, and especially if you're worried about the pistol, right? If you're worried about the offense that he was running in Atlanta, Josh is one of those guys that fully believes that Zac Robinson is going to be a guy that's going to be able to change what he does based on what he has. And something we were clamoring for on the defensive side of the ball, and we didn't necessarily see that as much. All right, let's go back to the Advent Health Training Center at One Buccaneer Place, and he kind of answers those questions about the offensive personnel he'll work with in Tampa and what he likes about them. Again, this is courtesy of our good friend, Greg Allman from Fox Sports.
You got to start with the offensive line. I mean, the offensive line is built the right way. When that group is going, there's no offensive line that you'd rather have around the league. So it starts with those guys up front. I think you look at the skill group, and it's a very versatile group. I mean, the receivers speak for themselves. You've got a number of guys that can do a number of different things, and their skill sets all match up really well. So excited about that. And then you take a look at the backs. Didn't study Bucky coming out because we weren't thinking about taking a running back, but then obviously that 24 season when he came on the scene, there was a number of things that he can do in the run and pass game. I'm excited to get to work with. Mentioned, tight ends, situation. They've got really stable and steady tight ends. Cade's free agent. Those things work themselves out, but yeah, collectively as a group, I mean, it's an exciting as a coach to come in and have that at your disposal, and just looking forward to building this the right way with these guys.
All right, so we got one more too I wanted to share with you guys here. Asked about running the pistol. So here it is right here. This is the the cause for concern for some people about the pistol here. Let me show it. This is asked exactly about it. This is the thing we were discussing with Josh Capo from Pewter Report. So here it is, right from the horse's mouth. Here's Zac Robinson on the pistol.
Yeah, won't dive too much into that. Obviously, we're tailoring everything to your personnel and what you believe is the best way to move the football. And there's definitely some advantages to that, working out of the pistol. But my background comes from, Sean, true run and pass marriage underneath the center, all those things that come with that. And obviously we'll pick our spots with what that looks like exactly, and we'll find out once we kick it off in September.
So there you go. I mean, that should quench any of the fears that anybody has about Zac Robinson. This is a guy that I wanted. If it wasn't going to be Mike McDaniel, I wanted Zac Robinson just because he comes from that McVay tree. He's worked with different guys, with Algier and Zac Robinson. I thought he got the most out of Kyle Pitts this year. When Drake London was healthy, I thought he did a good job with that. To be able to work with a guy like Kirk Cousins and then work with Michael Penix Jr., I like that. I like that there's a versatility. I like there's an open-mindedness. And if there's one thing that we've learned from guys that come from that Sean McVay tree, they're not stubborn and set in their ways of, all right, I'm only going to be able to do this. They are open. Like, look at what Sean McVay did this year with 3 tight ends. You had Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams and Kyron Williams and Blake Corum, and you're running a freaking system with 3 tight ends out there because it was working. Like, that's open-mindedness, man. That's the kind of guy that I want to see with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm not worried at all about this guy. I think he's going to do a great job, and I want to see what he can bring to the table. The Kingdom Disciple, I want to see us add Pitts. Him and Baker would cook. You wouldn't be able to double anyone, and we can run out of a spread formation, create more lanes for our RBs. The only problem that I have with that, buddy, is like Kyle Pitts still didn't have 1,000 yards this year, and that's what worries me, is even though he had 88 catches, it was still less than 1,000 yards. And I don't know if this offense, there's only one football to go around. And you've already invested so much into, like, you're not going to want a guy like Kyle Pitts to have an impact like Cade Otton. I think Cade Otton is kind of the perfect guy for this type of team because of how much you've invested into your wide receivers. And I get it. You can't have too many weapons, but we're talking about, obviously, you have a salary cap as well. But if Mike comes back, you have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Jalen McMillan, Emeka Ibuka, who you just used a first-round pick on. You have Bucky Irving. So you have 5 different playmakers. Where's Kyle Pitts fit in that situation? He'll be 5. He'll be 6, 4. And how much are you going to pay him? He's going to want to try to break the bank. This is a former first-round pick. This is a guy that's going to say, look at my recent history. But I don't know, man. I think the Buccaneers, they need a tight end that's going to be able to be like a Cade Otton, where some weeks he's going to be relied on early on in this year because of the struggles of the offensive line. You saw that Kate Otten had to, all right, I had to buckle my chin strap and I had to block more. Then at the end of the year, when things opened up a little bit and they needed to push the ball down the field, Kate Otten was the guy that was reliable in the passing game. So I think they need a guy like that. I don't know if it's different. I mean, look at all these other teams with these big time tight ends, right? Like the Trey McBride. Like, how many receivers do they have? I know Wilson stepped up at the end. They had Marvin Harrison Jr., but Marvin didn't have the greatest year. Look at Travis Kelce. For all the love that he gets, like, other than Tyreek Hill, has he really had a Pro Bowl wide receiver? They got a bunch of fast guys, but nobody like the Buccaneers have. So I don't know if the fit makes a lot of sense, right? I wanted to get to this, and I appreciate this comment too, to Kingdom Disciple. Saw you on Pewter Report, like your coverage on the Bucs. I would like your thoughts on our interior O-line and believe that's why the offense struggled pass running. Yes, and I said that to start the show today, if you missed it, and I'm not getting on you about it. It's part of the reason why I think losing a guy like your offensive line coach, Brian Picucci, means absolutely nothing. I don't think it's a key loss at all. Sorry. If he was that good, we would have been like, wow, the offensive line played over their heads. Albeit those 2 injuries to the guard spot. You still had 3/5 of your offensive line that last year under Liam Cohen was badass. You lose your 2 weakest pieces on your offensive line, and there was a big difference. I think a better offensive line coach would have done a better job. He would have got more out of those guys. And even if you disagree, even if you think that he had a decent year as an offensive line coach, decent, that's what you want? Nah, I'm good. I got lofty aspirations for this team. And that's the other thing too. I mean, do you end up moving Graham Barton to guard? Because I don't know. What's the long-term deal for a guy like Ben Bredesen? We don't know. We don't know. But do you go and get a center and you move Barton to guard? That's definitely a topic of conversation. And one thing that we do know when it comes to the Buccaneers is that they're open to making moves. We saw it with Ali Marpet. We saw it with Tristan Wirfs. Hell, we saw it with Graham Barton in week 1 this year. But I don't know if I'm giving credit to the offensive line coach because of that. Right? Is that the offensive line coach? Because Graham Barton was a first-round pick too. And in year 2, is he closer or farther away from a Pro Bowl? I don't know how much better he got in year 2. I haven't seen – listen, again, nobody was saying, I can't believe how well this offensive line looked this year. So if that's the case, are we really concerned about the offensive line coach moving on? I'm not. He's not, Dante Scarnecchia out there. He's not Alex Gibbs, right? I think the Bucs can do better. All right, guys, I love you all. Man, this has been a fun show today. Dave Mishkin, Rob Maaddi, a big thank you for both of those gentlemen, for joining us on the show today. Chan, who's better than you, buddy? I appreciate you. Rolly and Jose Colon with the Super Chats. The only way we're going to keep this show rolling is by the Super Chats. And, of course, our partners, Honest Hammer Custom Builders, LLC, all your residential and commercial needs. Again, my guy Russ is just fantastic, man. I got the sticker right here. I love this guy. He's the man. I got to get out to one of the job sites. I was going to try to get out there this week, but because of everything, I got USF Media Day tomorrow. I got Lightning on Thursday. It's just impossible. It's impossible. So not able to do that. But, man, I tell you what, Honest Hammer, the man. If you have a plot of land and you're looking to build a custom home, they're the people to do it. Kitchen renovations, bathroom renovations. You have a room in your house that you just want to put a new spin on it. They can help you out. 813-244-0956, thehonesthammer.com, thehonesthammer@gmail.com. Tell them that you heard it right here on the J Retro podcast and get you a discount. And then EverHealth, our EverHealth injury report on Thursday at 12:30 with Dr. Carlos Rodriguez, 17 different locations in Pinellas County. And they want to work with you from the cradle to the grave. They take any kind of insurance. They have a sliding scale for the uninsured. They have the EverHealth Institute, which is very similar to the broadcasting school that I went to when I wanted to change my career, when I went from a baseball coach to a guy that was working in sports radio. just being there at the EverHealth Institute and see the hands-on training that these students get, and just to know that they could end up walking to the other side of the parking lot and working for one of the fantastic medical centers there or in another medical facility. You just feel good, right? You want to be able to invest your time, your money, your energy into businesses that give back and that are just, you want to support local. I say this a lot, whether we're talking about Pewter Report or Joe Bucks fan or Lightning Insider or Tampa Bay Times. Support local, and that's what you'll do if you utilize Honest Hammer and EverHealth. Really, really great stuff there. Okay, today, after I do all this stuff, I will be at the Yingling Center tonight, 7 o'clock. Tip USF women's basketball against Charlotte. Get on out there and support Coach Michelle Woods-Baxter and the Bulls. We got to support them. The winning ways. We got to keep this train rolling. Also, tomorrow's show, 11 to 12, Power Hour from 11 to 12. I don't know if we'll have any guests tomorrow, but I will be there because I got to be there for USF Baseball and Softball Media Day. So I will be chatting with Coach Mitch Hannes on the baseball side and my buddy Coach Ken Erickson on the softball side. Can't wait to be out there. So from 11 to 12 tomorrow, and then at 12 on Thursday and Friday, we'll find out about Double E as well. All right, guys, make sure you follow me on all social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok. I love you guys, man. You guys are the best. Like and subscribe on YouTube. I'm trying to get over 10,000 followers on Twitter. So please share all my stuff on Twitter to help me out. Really, really good stuff as well. And, man, if you're a supporter of our program, I can't say enough nice things. If you're 10 toes down when it comes to the support of the Jay Recher podcast, I can't thank you enough. And a big shout out to the Kingdom Disciple, I Shine, and let's see, my guy. Look at my man. I love the Jagato 305, the man. I appreciate you, buddy. You got to call up. You haven't called in a while, buddy. Thank you very much. Steve and the whole crew. Man, so many comments today. You guys are the best. Oh, look at that. $5 super chat right at the end from Realtor David Zussman. Go check him out as well. Steve chiming in from NC. Thank you, brother. Stay warm up there. And everybody that's watching outside of the Bay Area. It's getting cold here, too. They just canceled baseball practice tonight. We're kind of suckers down here when it comes to the weather. 54 right now, but a low of 35. Listen, to other parts of the country, they're laughing at us for a low of 35, but it's a low of 33 on Wednesday and a low of 31 on Sunday. So there you go. Some good weather for the outdoor game, the Stadium Series at Raymond James Stadium. Cannot wait to be out there. All right, tomorrow, 11 to 12, a power hour, and then back to normal at noon on Thursday live from Benchmark International Arena. That's going to wrap it up for me. I love you all. Appreciate the support. We'll see you tomorrow at 11 right here on the Jay Recher